St. John Street, to me was, I just really have so many great memories. Me and my boys, uh, we, I guess we added to some of the character of St. John Street. The railroad tracks, were very important to us. We played on the railroad tracks. We would raid the fruit cars. That would be delivering fruit down the Central Wholesale. Sometimes the trains would be backed up into our territory, and we had learned how to open the fruit cars. We would eat fruit until we were sick. We also used the tracks, to go down to the downtown area, where there were just an abundance of theaters. When we got tired of going to the Columbia Theater on St. John Street, we would walk all the way down the tracks, and we'd go to the Palace, the Capitol, the Rialto, the Strand. What are some of the others?
Northtown.
Northtown was Rutherford. Sometimes we'd go to the Richard, which was across the tracks, I think I was in the 6th grade when we lived on Michigan Avenue, right at the corner of Lee Street. And as you recall, there's a viaduct that goes through Lee Street up through the Buick plant. They shut it down or cut it off later. But it was the gradation was such that whenever there was a heavy rain, cars couldn't go past because it would flood out. And sometimes dairy truck drivers, would try and defy the height limit, and they would try to go under the viaduct and get stuck. And, needless to say, we had a lot of fun with that. The apartment building that we lived in was owned by the Carpenter family. Sam Carpenter, Alice Carpenter, Ken Scott is an offspring, Ken and Leroy Scott. And one of my neighbors was this lady that we called Slap God Almighty. And Slap God Almighty got her name from, I guess, an encounter with a police officer. She slapped the policeman. She was bad. And the policeman asked her, "Do you know who I am?" She said, "I don't care who you are. I was Slap God Almighty." And the name stuck. And from that point on, of course, we do. From that point on, she was Slap God Almighty. Frolicking up and down St. John Street. And I tell you, we went from one end of St. John to the other. I mean, and there are just so many landmarks that are burned in my head, like the old Green Home for Funerals on Garfield and St. John Street. James Chapel, which is now St. James CME Church, was on Camp Hall near St. John. And I used to, my friends and I would go to a vacation Bible school at James Chapel because they would give away food and goodies. We didn't go necessarily for the Bible lesson. They had goodies they were giving away. St. James eventually moved to Lion Street, Lion at the corner of Wood Street. McNeil's Auto Shop was there. Hooper's Pool Room, my brother used to work there. Was on between Maple and Dakota Street. There's the Balkan Bakery, where we go across the street and get day-old bread. It was next door to Hooper's. And across the street was the RG Club, and the 500 Club was an after-hours joint in that same block. Folks would leave the RG Club and walk over to the 500 Club, for some after-hours parties. And we were in an apartment in the back next to the Flyers Club, and we could look through the slats in the wall and watch the grown folks party. And I can remember Big Frank and Carandus Bowen and Gerald Blassingame were in a singing group, and they would sing there just about every weekend. And we would just look through the cracks and listen to them. It was great. Further down, there was was Joe's Tavern, which was a landmark over there, the Elks Club, Pat's Drugstore that I mentioned earlier. That was formerly the International Institute. I can remember walking home from Fairview School one day near Pat's Drugstore, and a lady shouted out the window, "Do you guys want a baseball team?" And I said, "Of course." I've never played a game of baseball in my life, but I mean, it was a giveaway. What are you going to do? So yeah, I went up there, and she said, "Okay, well, this is what we'll do. We'll buy all your jerseys, your gloves, your bats, your balls. All you gotta do is get the team." So I went and we put together a little what we used to call a friendship team at George Walton, better known as Smut, Sam Ivory, Paul Pierce, Lee Dale Johnson. I mean, none of us were athletes. And I can remember our first game, we played against a team that Mike Shumpert was on the team, and Noah Shumpert was the coach. And man, they waxed us like 25-0. And we would go up there every day and get beat. We'd get a pounding every time we played. But, that was the learning process, and we eventually got a little bit better. Woodrow would make me tear up here when I laugh too hard. That was the Superior Life Insurance that the lady that shouted out the window, she worked for Superior Life Insurance. Across the street, we had the Red Dog Coney Island, Friday's Barbershop, Boker's Groceries, the Columbia Theater. The next block was the Hut. The Hut was famous, or infamous, however you want to look at it. Chicken Shack, Butler's Funeral Home, Callaway Cleaners, and moving north, there was the St. John Center, George Lowe's Cleaners, right there on Vermont and St. John, Holbrook Records. Dr. Wendell B. Harris had an office down on Florida at St. John's. And then there, of course, the roller rink that all of us used to hang out at. Now, St. John, of course, produced many, many athletes. And just to name a few, and you can see some of them along the wall there. There was Felix Toots Miller. He was an all-state basketball player. Charlie T. Berry, who is now Dr. Charlie T. Berry, and owns Educational Testing, Inc. Benny McCombs was an outstanding prize fighter and softball pitcher. Leroy Bolden, all-state running back, college standout. Philip the Hawk Gaines, another outstanding running back and track star. And of course, there was Cloyce Dickerson, Richard Dix, Norm Bryant, Monroe Dent, Floyd Fielder, Baby James Parker, Morris Rising, Al Washington Sr., William Wallace, and Paul Wright. Now, during the early St. John era, there were a few African American police officers, and this research led me to something I didn't know before, is that George Friley was a former police officer, along with Archie Parks, Maso Jarrett, Willie B. Jones. And that's probably it during that